Hello, Scott and Lisa Cahill again. Concerning the Oroville Dam. One of the things that has concerned us lately is a lot of the communication about the hydrated portion of the downstream face in the left groin of the Oroville Dam. There have been a number of stories from there's nothing wrong, it's just it rains and then the grass grows, to the dam is in immediately failing condition. And almost all these stories are irresponsible. The situation is this. There's a hydrated section on the left groin of the dam, about 40% from the top of the total dynamic head of the dam, the elevation of the pool. 40% of the way down, there's this green area. It's been photographed many times by many people for many years. And we have made the statement a number of times that we feel that it is the evolution of water from the pool through the fractured rock of the indigenous soils on the left abutment into the face of the dam. We have said that it needs to be repaired through the use of a grouting program, and that it is not an imminent failure mode, yet it is a failure mode. So what Lisa's going to discuss is what constitutes a failure mode, what that means, and then she's going to discuss what has been said about this and the lack of truthfulness in the conveyance of information. To give you some background, in the original geological report that was done on the dam, there was what the geologists called a shear on the left and right abutments. By that, what they mean, here are the words. Two major shear areas exist beneath the dam, which are about mid-height on each abutment. Both are steeply dipping and strike normal to the axis of the dam.
And that is from the California State Water Project Volume 3 storage facilities, in which they discussed the construction of Oroville Dam.
So even at the time before the dam was constructed, they recognized these canted planes of a seam in the rock, which one would assume correctly would transmit water, and indeed they do on both of those abutting areas, and particularly on that left abutment where we see that green spot. The frustration that we have had has been that sometimes our words have been a bit twisted by others, either out of a lack of understanding of what was said or in order to create sensationalism. And also, the truth has been distorted by people who should be responsible for maintaining and running the dam. That is very troubling, because truth is something that is important in the management of such a high liability issue as dam ownership. You need people involved who are absolutely honorable, because people have rights to understand what's going on, and those rights outweigh any other concerns, period. So anyway, I'm going to jump up here. Lisa's going to finish this and discuss what was said, who said what's actually true. We talked about briefly there that there's a seam. The seam carries water. The water vents into the surface, well beneath the surface of the downstream slope, up too high to be phreatic water. It is not rainwater. It is not a natural spring manifesting on the face of a dam. Statements like that by engineers are absolutely ridiculous and absolutely irresponsible, and shameful, quite frankly. So Lisa will go through that, talk about what's happening there. The dam is not failing, but we've been staring at the same thing here since early on this dam for many, many years. It still hasn't been repaired, and still we're making up stories about it. It's time to initiate a grouting program and the correct investigations so that we can get the thing repaired. Everybody's running around handing out money and stuff right now to assure themselves of getting a long-term renewal on a FERC license. That's the only hammer hanging over these guys' heads. They self-regulate, so they only answer to themselves. You can see the way that they've handled information. I hope that they do not get that FERC license, and I hope that FERC, being the only one left who can control these people potentially, uses that control to get this dam in good shape again. Thanks.
Okay, first we're going to talk about the term dam failure as a term and as a process. It's a technical term, but it also has a colloquial use. You know if your refrigerator fails, it quit working. So the perception is the dam is going to stop impounding water if it's failing. And that is not the case necessarily. The term dam failure relates to the type of structure and its foundation characteristics. Let me just start. I'll just read the item to read here, and it is from the FEMA brochure entitled Federal Guidelines for Dam Safety, Federal Emergency Management Agency, June 1979, and reprinted in 2004. There are many potential causes and modes of dam failure, depending on the type of structure and its foundation characteristics. Similarly, there are degrees of failure and often progressive stages of failure. Many dam failures can be prevented from reaching a final catastrophic stage by recognition of early indicators or precursor conditions and by prompt, effective emergency actions. So this seepage that we're discussing at this stage falls more in the line of a precursor condition that's been allowed to exist for quite some time and needs to be dealt with so that it will not progress to the final catastrophic stage of dam failure. And that is that's what they're alluding to with that terminology. So let's talk about what this green spot has been called. Scott did that a little bit. We know from the May 4th release from DWR of this year that they have determined that these green stripes are caused by rainwater. But this dam has been inspected by the state sometimes a couple of times a year for quite some time now, and we're in possession of the inspection reports from 2008 and forward. So let's see what the state dam inspector says about this green spot. In 2008, he says, the unusual green area caused by seepage near the left abutment was visible. In 2009, the seep is not mentioned, or the green spot is not mentioned. In June of 2010, he says, the long-established wet area at mid-level on the left end of the dam has been dry in recent years due to the low reservoir level. During this inspection, the area was green, as shown in photograph 3. No other seepage areas were observed on the embankment or the groins. In 2011, the State Dam Safety Inspector says in his February report, the downstream slope had a cover of dry grass and weeds as shown in photograph 1. The exception was the previously observed seepage zone, indicated at mid-slope, adjacent to the left abutment. This area is shown in photographs 1 and 2. Although the area ranged from damp to wet when probed, no moving water was observed. The cause of the seepage has yet to be determined. Perched rainwater within the embankment has been considered as a source. Another possible source could be an abutment seepage area noted during construction, which Scott discussed earlier. and he advises routine monitoring of the area should continue. Any unexpected changes to the seepage pattern should be investigated and reported to DSOD. Quote, the long-established wet area at mid-level on the left side of the dam was wet. No other seepage areas were observed on the embankment or groins. And then in October of 2011, Dam Safety advises continue to monitor the mid-slope seepage along the left side of the downstream slope. The lush vegetation should be trimmed low to facilitate monitoring activity. Now, those of you who live there know in October, if they found lush vegetation, it had a source of water. The downstream slope had a cover of dry grass and weeds as shown in photographs 1 and 2. The exception was the long-standing seepage area at mid-level along the left side of the downstream slope. Lush grass and weed cover this area. The ground remains wet, but no active flow was observed. And then later in the same report, the long-established wet area at mid-slope on the left end of the dam remains active. The field staff should continue to monitor the area for unexpected changes in the seepage pattern or flow quantity, and the vegetation should be kept low enough to monitor the area effectively. You may notice it sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over. That's because the reports say the same thing over and over. And these various inspection reports by the State of California Division of Safe Dams are available on Document Cloud. I would say that you want to download those sooner rather than later because they might disappear. In 2013, in February, continue to monitor the mid-slope seepage along the left side of the downstream slope. The lush vegetation should be trimmed low to facilitate monitoring activity. A means of monitoring the extent of the seepage area should be developed and implemented. The downstream slope had a cover of low, dry grass and weeds, as shown in photographs 2 through 4. The exception was the long-standing seepage area at mid-level along the left side of the embankment. Lush weeds were just starting to emerge in this area. The embankment is typically damp in this area for a large part of the year, but no active flow was observed. Also, see the seepage paragraphs below, which continue. The long-established wet area at mid-slope on the left end of the dam remains active. The field staff should continue to monitor the area for unexpected changes in seepage pattern, flow, or quantity. A means of monitoring the extent of the seepage area should be implemented so that year-to-year changes can be recorded. In September of 2013, 7 months later, OFD staff should continue to monitor the mid-slope seepage at the left side of the dam embankment. The lush vegetation should be trimmed low to facilitate monitoring activity. A means of monitoring the extent of the seepage area should be developed and implemented again. Further, they say vegetation control was satisfactory with the exception of the long-standing seepage area at the mid-level along the left downstream slope. This part of the embankment typically ranges from damp to wet during the year. The tall weeds should be cut low to facilitate seepage monitoring. And then later on they continue, the tall weeds are the result of good growing conditions caused by seepage on the face of the dam. The vegetation in this area should be kept low to facilitate the observation of seepage conditions throughout the year. In 2014, they advised staff to continue monitoring the seepage at the left of the downstream slope, to trim the ground cover once again so that it can be easily monitored. And they say the long-established wet area at the mid-slope on the left side of the dam remains. A small saturated area was observed at the left groin. See photographs 4 and 5. The field staff should continue to monitor the area for unexpected changes in the seepage pattern or flow quantity. A means of monitoring the extent of the seepage area should be implemented once again, 3 years in a row. Staff should continue to monitor the mid-slope seepage at the left side of the downstream slope, they say, in September 2014. And the actual inspection report was done in June and August, but the report date is September. It didn't get out until then. And they again talk about the long-established wet area. In many cases, dam safety has left the language in from year to year unchanged because the situation has been continuing for so many years. In 2015, They again recommend monitoring the mid-slope drainage on the left side, or mid-slope seepage on the left side of the dam, cutting the vegetation. They say the historical dam area at mid-level along the left downstream slope was dry. Less vegetation growth was observed compared to the past. The ongoing drought and the low reservoir water level may be contributing factors. Now, later in the same report, they say no signs of seepage were observed along the downstream toe, groins, or through the visible portion of the slopes, except for the historical seepage at mid-level along the left downstream slope. Seepage in this area was relatively low due to the ongoing drought and low waterhead in the reservoir. The owner needs to establish a means to monitor the extent of the seepage in this area to develop year-to-year seepage trends. The owner also needs to continue controlling vegetation periodically to allow a thorough visual inspection. And then in September of 16, they again say the long-standing seepage area at mid-slope on the left side of the dam has dried up due to the prolonged drought. And farther in the same report, the traditional wet area at mid-slope on the left end of the dam was dry due to the drought conditions. So as you can see, for almost 10 years, the California Safe Dams people have called this area seepage. And even in the first press conference, the green spot was referred to as a seep or area of seepage. Only since then has the language changed, not by the dam safety experts of the state, but by DWR, to call it a rainwater. There's also one FEMA document that discusses the seepage area, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm referring now to a letter sent to FEMA by DWR, and it's August 31st, 2016. It's in response to two letters from FEMA dated in 2015. And one of the things that FEMA has recommended as part of the 12D recommendations is a single write-up that provides all available information on the, quote, green spot on the downstream face. Further down in the report, DWR quotes back to FEMA the exact language of what they asked for item number R18. And that is, the FEMA board recommends that the issue of potential instability associated with the green spot on the downstream face of the dam toward the left abutment between elevation 600 and 700 approximately be investigated. The investigation should evaluate the potential characteristics of the Zone 3 material in the green spot area, including the strength properties of the low permeability materials and the seismic stability of the dam, with due consideration to uncertainty in all aspects of the evaluation. So FEMA was concerned enough about this green spot to ask them to do an analysis of it and provide information back to them. DWR commits in that document to complete item number R18, which I was just reading, and provide the information by September 1st, 2018. So at the same time that DWR is putting out a press release saying that this item has been caused by rainwater, this green spot, they are or should be in the process of providing FERC the extensive information that they've asked for regarding this seep. It's a seep. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time.
Okay, so what does all this mean? And what it means is this. What it means is, I guess, one of two things. You may believe that there's a huge amount of disagreement and misunderstanding and that a number of people in the engineering community don't understand what's going on with a simple seep on an abutment of an embankment dam. That's one way that you can resolve the disparity that Lisa so accurately pointed out. Another way to resolve that disparity is that people are intentionally misleading others as to what is going on the dam. And I know where my mind is, and I also know where your mind is, unless you're one of the trolls set against me by the owners and operators of the dam and the regulators, who are all the same people. So everyone's had a concern about the seep in the left groin, including myself. Some have sensationalized it. Some have marginalized it to the point of making statements that are completely irresponsible, like that it's caused by rain. Even a child would know that if rain falling on a dam with a like surface across its entirety were to cause a green spot, it would cause a green spot across the entirety of the dam. Rain, I won't even go, everybody agrees on it. Everyone knows better than that.
Would you, though, talk about how common is it? Is this a typical problem that earthen dams have, or is this something people see?
This is very common. I mean, how many times have we chased seeps and ports where it evolved around the groin? I mean, 90% of the time, it's coming through indigenous soils. In this particular dam, my feeling is that there are many, many, many of these ports and seeps all across the dam, moving through the indigenous soil of the foundation of the dam and both abutments. And I think that over a period of time, I'll be able to offer some documentation that will at least show why I feel that. So there's reason behind my statements, and they're made not even to criticize. Although, again, there are two realities here. One is the reality of the dam. Dams do fail. Dams fail. And the way they fail are through mismanagement and a lack of maintenance. That's a reality. It's a very serious reality that it seems to me, very frustratingly, that no one seems to understand this responsibility. Listening to the Oroville mayor talk about the $3 million she got and how these people are friends and neighbors over and over and over again, it boggles my mind. It's very frustrating to me. $3 million, which theoretically is going to recreational facilities, which have been promised for 50 years, by the way. Some of them have occurred, some of them have not. All of this information is not given to you so that you'll worry more than you should, or that you will be afraid and concerned. I'm not worried at this point that the dam will break in the night and you won't have enough notice to get out safely. I do encourage my friends, and I have many friends in that valley there below the dam. I encourage you to keep your car filled with gasoline, to keep the things you need, some peanut butter maybe, and anything that's precious to you, in a bag you can put in the car or stuffed in the trunk of the car if you feel that's safe, whatever, so that when it's time to go, you're ready to go. Nobody should have to stop and get gas that day. So please, for heaven's sakes, keep your car filled up when the elevations get high especially. And I think that there will be enough notice, and I think that your sheriff is a responsible man who will make the call again when he has to. And so I don't want you staying up at night worried, because that doesn't help any. The only thing that helps here is being prepared and being honest and understanding exactly what's going on. I want to be right, that I can tell you the truth and you can use that to make a considered action. And I don't want to be wrong.